will make sense to all of us, that will give us an opportunity to reflect on a very uncomfortable topic to talk about, facing death well. So this morning I'm going to talk about death, dying, bereavement. Let me first begin by introducing myself. My name is Jerry Otieno. I'm one of the ministers here. I'm a father of 3 children, and I have to be very clear here that I'm a husband of 1 wife. I come from Kenya where polygamy is legal, so I have to be very categorical that I only have 1 wife. Otherwise I would have said only 1 known wife. Both my grandparents had 5 wives, so I have to come clean and clarify that I had never inherited that part of their genes. It's a privilege to share this morning with you a bit of my story. When Jeff asked me to speak, he said, now that you are Stalham Person of the Year, which normally I call sporty, and said, would you like to talk at our next breakfast? I said yes, because I never wanted to miss an opportunity to tell you all about the privileges and the roles of a sporty Stalham Person of the Year. Unfortunately for me, when the mayor, Kev, gave me the award, he forgot to give me a manual. So most of the time I don't know what I'm doing with this privilege. But I understand that mine are limited because my boss has the keys to the town. He's the only one who's allowed to do anything here in Stalham. But above everything, receiving this award is an incredible privilege for me. Sometimes I wonder why I was given that award. It's such a great honor to be bestowed upon you. But on reflection, I think one of the reasons why I was nominated and voted the sporty Stalham Person of the Year was my involvement with the Stalham Bereavement Support Group, a group that began 3 years ago. Yesterday was our 3rd year anniversary. The group began more than 3 years ago, and 3 years ago, after we had unexpectedly lost our 13-month-old daughter, Anna Otieno. She had barely begun to walk. We had dreams for her and hopes for her future. Then suddenly, everything changed. People often ask me, can anyone ever get over losing a child? The honest answer is no. Losing a child is quite unnatural because it's supposed to be the other way around. No matter the age or the circumstances, you can never get over it. You learn to carry it. Grief becomes part of you. You welcome grief. But also you need to learn over the years not to allow your grief define all that you can become. It is the grief that eventually led to the establishment of Stalham Bereavement Support Group. My wife and I began this group with our friend Melanie Weimer, who had lost our 11-year-old son Harry, who had battled cancer for 7 years. He died only 2 months before we lost Anna. And with time we met up and we were talking. And in our discussions and meetings, we realized the need for a local support group. And so we began 3 years ago a group, hoping that we can have a group that runs regularly to provide a safe, friendly, welcoming and confidential space for people to openly and honestly share their experiences, their feelings, and helpful ideas as we journey through grief. Over the past 3 years, I've discovered that every grief is different. Losing a spouse is different from losing a child, and losing a child is likewise very different. Some losses come after long illness, others arrive without a warning. So that follows that each one of us has different grieving needs. Yet there is no formula. But the truth is, there are some lessons that can help us, that we can learn, that can help us to think about grief and death. Being the 3rd year anniversary of the group's existence, I thought it would be nice to share 3 simple lessons I've learned from running and being part of a wonderful group. 3 points that I'm going to share highlights our need to think and talk about death and grief, to plan for death and dying, and to not walk alone. These are not exactly cheerful breakfast topics, but they are necessary for us to think about. And I'll just briefly consider them one by one. The first one is think and talk about death and bereavement. Death and dying are taboo subjects that instinctively we avoid. Yet the strange thing is that avoiding conversations about death don't stop it coming. It simply leaves us less prepared when it does. I meet up with a man regularly whose wife is undergoing ill health and taking a lot of tablets. And one day he admitted to me that he dreads thinking or talking about death because he cannot imagine life without her. Yet one of the greatest gifts we can give our families and friends is the permission to speak honestly about death and dying before or after it happens. As men, we are often trained to solve problems rather than expressing our feelings, so we avoid emotional topics. Sadly, women are much better at doing it. One of the healthiest things we can do is to create a space where people can speak honestly about death and dying and bereavement. When we stop talking about death, we stop talking about life because we pretend we are immortal. We postpone important conversations. We assume that there will always be another tomorrow, another Christmas, another birthday, another phone call. But suddenly, there isn't. Thinking about death is not morbid. It helps us appreciate life. It reminds us to forgive. It reminds us to say our sorries and our thank yous. It helps us to tell the people around us that we love them and we care for them while we still can. It encourages us to live life today in a way that leaves fewer regrets tomorrow. And so before death happens, take the courage to talk about death, dying, and bereavement. But also after it happens, take the courage to speak about it. One thing bereaved people tell me repeatedly is that friends often disappear after the funeral. People don't know what to say, so they say nothing. Sometimes the hardest part of grief begins when everyone else says nothing and assumes that life has returned to normal. Sometimes people don't need answers or wisdom about their grief. They just need a companion to talk and to make them feel that they are being heard and they are being seen. We need to learn to think and to talk about death and dying before and after it happens. The second thing that I've learned is that there is need for us to plan for death and Planning is an act of love. Most of us insure our homes and our cars. We service our cars. We have a retirement plan. Yet many people never prepare for the certainty we all will face. Planning doesn't hasten death. It eases burdens. I've met grieving families who not only had to cope with the enormous loss, but also had to guess what mom or dad would have wanted. Should we have a burial or cremation? Who knows where the important documents are? Does anyone know the password? Has a will been written yet? What sort of music should we play? What sort of funeral should we have to reflect their lives and their faith? These conversations may be uncomfortable, but they are profoundly caring and important. When these decisions are already made and discussed, family are free to focus on grieving rather than guessing. I know he may not mind, but one of the persons that I've learned greatly from is Jeff, who is a member of our bereavement group. He shares openly how he had those difficult conversations with the wife. Some of the things that he never thought about, the color of the coffin, for example. And all these things, he says, are very important when a death has occurred, because he is now able to have that peace and to focus on his bereavement and grief, because he had talked about it through. It is important for us to plan. If you need to take a life insurance, do take, or any other plans. Give yourself the permission to plan for death. It's not evil. It's just it's one of the blessings you can leave for those who you will be leaving behind. Yes, as a Christian at a very personal level, planning for death includes thinking about life beyond death and asking ourselves the question, are we spiritually prepared for death? Because if the way we answer the question will be the determining factor of where our hope will lie. The way we answer that question will determine how we live our life now and will sustain us even in darkest time. So as we plan for the physical death, we also need to plan for the spiritual death. And lastly, there is need for us not to walk alone. Then this is the point that I really feel strongly about. Don't walk alone when you are faced with death and dying. Bereavement can be incredibly lonely. Even in a crowd or in a crowded room like this, you may still feel that loneliness, especially among men. Many of us retreating to ourselves. We keep busy, we throw ourselves into work, we avoid difficult conversations. Sometimes we think that we are protecting others or even protecting ourselves, but isolation rarely heals. You need a community around you. You need people that you can talk to. One of the blessings for us was very early on when we lost Anna. We were connected with East Anglian Children's Hospice. That has been an amazing support system for us, meeting parents who have lost their children, trans every month, and also have the opportunity for our children to have sessions. And we normally say that every time we go to each, we go there for Anna. And that's the space where we can go to remember and think about her. Our memorial support group has taught me remarkable things, and is a great source of strength for me and for those who attend. I would say that it is for everyone, but again, it's not for everyone, in the sense that it has the potential of helping anyone who is undergoing grief. But we also realize that those who come, not all of them will stay. Some only need a little bit of help, because all of us have different grieving needs and we are at different point with our grief. Healing often begins when someone says, I thought I was the only one, and then the other person nods and says, so did I. And suddenly there is this connection, this understanding, there is this hope. None of us was designed to face life's hardest moments in isolation. That's why you need people around you, and that's why churches matter. That's why family matters. That's why friendship matters. That's why support group matters. Even sharing breakfast like this do matter, because every conversation builds relationship that may one day become a lifeline. One day it may be your friend who needs you. Another day it may be you who your friends need. Pride tends to tell us that we can cope alone, but wisdom tells us to ask for help. I've never met anyone who regrets reaching out. I've met many who regret waiting too long. If you're carrying grief today, please don't assume that you can carry it by yourself. Talk to someone, talk to a family, talk to a minister or a trusted friend. Join a support group. Call and seek for help. Above all, as a Christian, I would say, talk to God. He already knows our hearts. Nothing can catch him by surprise. Nothing you feel will make him turn away. In closing, as I look back over our journey losing our little daughter, reminds me of that. It still reminds that losing my daughter is still the greatest sorrow of my life. If anyone had told me that God would use that heartbreak to help other grieving family, I would have doubted that. Yet it's exactly what happened. I would give anything to bring my daughter back. But since I cannot change the past, I can choose how I respond. Death and bereavement and pain can make you bitter, but it can also make you better. And so every time we choose to remember our little girl in different ways, like as you can see in our picture, she's still part of our family. We try to include her in everything we do. So let me leave you with these three thoughts. First, don't be afraid to think and talk about death and grief. Honest conversations are healthy conversations. Second, plan well. It's one of the greatest gifts you can leave for those who you love, both practically and spiritually. And thirdly, don't walk alone. Life was never meant to be lived in isolation. We need one another. We need God. One day each one of us will leave this world. The question is not whether that day will come. The question is, how will we live until it does? May we live with faith. May we love generously. May we prepare wisely. May we support one another faithfully. And may we find our hope in the God who promises to walk with us through the valley of the shadow of death. God who promises that death will not have the final word. Thank you.